Imagine asking the one person you trust most, your best friend, to pretend they love you for just one night. You tell yourself it's only a fantasy, only a favor. But the moment their hand touches yours, you realize something terrifying and beautiful. It no longer feels pretend. Love, in its quietest form, often begins not with a spark, but with a steady glow. It hides in moments so ordinary that they go unnoticed: shared jokes, exchanged glances, the comfort of knowing someone always picks up your calls. When two people become close friends, they build a space free of judgment and full of familiarity, a place where masks fall away and hearts feel safe. It is in this gentle environment that love secretly grows roots. Neither person realizes it at first, because it doesn't shout or demand attention. It simply settles in the small spaces between arguments, apologies, laughter, and late-night confessions. The friendship becomes a foundation so natural that it feels almost impossible to imagine life any other way. Over time, this hidden love grows in tiny increments. Subtle changes in how they look at each other, the unexpected jealousy that rises when someone else shows interest, the inexplicable comfort they find in each other's presence. They start learning the language of each other's emotions without needing explanations. When one is quiet, the other understands the unspoken reason. When one is hurting, the other senses it even before a word is shared. Yet both continue to label it as just friendship, because acknowledging anything more feels like stepping onto fragile ground. The fear of losing the friendship often outweighs the desire to explore what might be deeper. They convince themselves that these feelings are normal, that all close friendships have this intensity, even though deep down, they know this connection is different. There comes a moment, sometimes small, sometimes monumental, when one of them begins to notice the truth hidden under the surface. Maybe it happens when they watch the other person laughing freely, unaware of how beautiful or warm they look. Maybe it happens in a moment of vulnerability, when one admits a fear or a dream, and the other feels an instinctive urge to protect them or cheer them on. These moments stir emotions they didn't expect to feel. Suddenly, a simple hug lingers too long, a compliment carries too much weight, and silence between them becomes loaded with possibilities. Friendship starts to feel like the beginning of something much deeper, something their hearts recognize, but their minds are still trying to understand. When love hides within friendship, it can become both a comfort and a conflict. Comfort, because there is undeniable safety in being with someone who already knows your flaws, who has seen your worst days but chooses to stay. Conflict, because acknowledging the love means risking everything familiar. The mind whispers warnings. What if they don't feel the same? What if confessing ruins everything? What if friendship is all we're meant to be? Yet the heart counters with equally strong questions. Why does it feel different with them? Why does my world feel brighter when they're around? Why does the thought of them being with someone else hurt so much? This internal tug-of-war can last months or even years, with neither person brave enough to name the truth. As the unspoken love deepens, their actions become louder than their words. They begin to care more intensely, showing up at inconvenient hours, remembering details no one else notices, offering support even before it's asked for. Friends don't always prioritize each other this way, but they do. Friends don't always feel a surge of warmth from a small touch, but they do. Friends don't always think about each other late into the night, but they do. Every gesture becomes evidence of something more profound. The line between friend and something more grows thinner, blurred by emotions they don't dare to express. And though they stay silent, the truth builds inside them, waiting for the right moment to surface. The beauty of love that grows out of friendship is that it is built on a solid emotional foundation, shared memories, mutual respect, deep understanding. It isn't rushed or impulsive. It grows naturally, steadily, in ways neither person intended. This love doesn't burst into the room. It drifts in softly, like a familiar scent or a remembered melody. And when one night or one conversation finally brings the truth to light, they realize something extraordinary. They were falling in love long before they even recognized it. Friendship had been the disguise, the safe haven, the slow-burning flame. And only when they looked closely did they understand that what they had mistaken for ordinary companionship was, in fact, the beginning of something extraordinary, something they were meant to find all along. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as weakness, especially in a world that teaches us to stay guarded, stay composed, and never let anyone see the fragile parts of our heart. But true vulnerability, the kind that demands honesty, courage, and emotional openness, is a profound strength. When she asked her best friend for one night of pretend love, she wasn't being weak. She wasn't begging for attention. She was allowing herself to be seen, fully and without disguise. That moment required her to lower every wall she had built over the years, to speak a fear she had never voiced before, and to take the risk of being misunderstood. It was bravery in its purest form, the bravery to admit she needed someone. Most people find it easy to wear confidence like armor. It's simple to smile when your heart is trembling, to pretend everything is fine while carrying the weight of loneliness or insecurity. But to confess a desire so intimate, to say, "I need you tonight," even if it's just pretend, is something entirely different. It reveals the tender truth beneath the practiced smile. She knew that by making that request, she was exposing the most sensitive part of herself. He could reject her, he could laugh, he could misunderstand her intentions, and yet she chose honesty anyway. That choice didn't make her fragile. It made her incredibly strong. It takes strength to show someone your true emotional landscape, especially when it contains fear, longing, or unresolved pain. Her vulnerability didn't just reveal her needs, it revealed her trust. You cannot be vulnerable with someone you don't trust deeply. Trust turns into a bridge between two hearts, creating a safe place where emotions can be shared without shame. When she asked him for that night, she was silently saying, "I trust you with the parts of me that I hide from the world." And trust, once given, is one of the strongest gifts anyone can offer. It tells the other person that they matter, that their presence has weight, that their reaction has power. And she believed in his kindness enough to take that emotional leap. To her, he wasn't a millionaire or a man of status. He was the person who made her feel safe enough to open up. What she didn't know was that her vulnerability lit something inside him as well. People think strength is loud, commanding, tough. But sometimes strength is soft. It's in the cracking voice, the trembling confession, the moment you allow someone to witness your fears. Her honesty touched him more deeply than any romantic gesture ever could. When someone allows you to see their vulnerability, you don't see them as weak. You see them as real. And realness is rare. To him, her request wasn't a burden. It was a privilege. It showed him how much she valued him, how deeply she trusted his presence, and how much courage it took for her to speak so openly. Her vulnerability didn't push him away, it pulled him closer. In that single moment, she broke the illusion that she was unshakable. She allowed emotion to stand without a filter, and in doing so, she unknowingly gave him permission to be vulnerable too. He didn't have to hide behind confidence or success. He could admit his own feelings, insecurities, and desires. Her honesty created a space where both of them could express what they had been afraid to say aloud. Vulnerability, when shared, becomes a bond. It transforms the relationship from something comfortable into something meaningful. It becomes a connection built not just on good moments, but on honest ones. Her act of courage rippled into him, unlocking emotions he had long held back. In truth, vulnerability is not about exposing your weaknesses. It is about embracing your humanity. It is about acknowledging that you have needs, fears, dreams, and longings, and that sharing them does not diminish you but deepens your connection with those who care. She thought she was asking for a small favor, but what she truly did was reveal her heart. And sometimes, showing your heart is the strongest thing you can do. Through that moment of openness, she stepped into a power far greater than fear. She showed that real strength isn't in hiding your feelings. It's in letting someone see them, even if only for one night. There is something uniquely powerful about moments that begin as pretend. When people agree to fake something, whether it is affection, confidence, or even love, they often think they can remain detached, safely hidden behind the mask of performance. But the heart has a way of slipping through the cracks of pretense, revealing truths that were buried long before the act began. When she asked him for one night of pretend love, it was meant to be a harmless, temporary situation. She thought she could handle it. She believed she could keep her emotions neatly tucked away, untouched by the illusion they were about to create. But pretending to be loved by someone who already held a quiet power over her heart was far more dangerous than she realized. The moment he agreed, the dynamic between them shifted. A line that had existed for years, an invisible boundary separating friendship from something deeper, quietly dissolved. They both stepped into a space that neither had dared to explore before. The plan was simple: play a role for one night. Smile a little longer, stand a little closer, maybe share a dance or a soft conversation. But in those small actions, truth began to creep through the doors they had kept locked. They felt a spark in moments that were supposed to be scripted. They reacted authentically when they were supposed to be acting. And with every passing minute, it became harder to distinguish where the performance ended and the real feelings began. There is a surprising honesty that emerges when people pretend to be something they secretly wish they could be. Pretend affection can feel too natural if the heart has been waiting for an excuse to express it. What she didn't know was that he had been pretending long before that night. Pretending not to care too deeply, pretending to stay just in the friend zone, pretending his heart wasn't already tethered to hers. So when the act began, he wasn't stepping into a new role. He was stepping into a truth he had buried. The ease with which he held her, the softness in his voice, the tenderness in his eyes, none of it was rehearsed. It was real, and the pretense simply gave him permission to show it. As the night unfolded, they found themselves falling into a rhythm that felt strangely natural. The laughter came too easily. The touches lingered too long. The conversations dipped into emotions they had avoided discussing for years. She began to notice the sincerity in his actions, the way he guided her through a crowd protectively, the way he looked at her as if no one else existed, the way he remembered every small detail about her. None of it was required. None of it was part of the pretend. It was simply him, unguarded, expressing affection he had never dared to reveal. And in those moments, she felt something shift inside her too, an awakening of feelings she had convinced herself she didn't have. What makes pretend love so revealing is that it removes the guilt and fear of real confession. They could blame their closeness on the role they were playing, allowing themselves to explore emotions without admitting their depth. Pretend gave them a safe excuse. It's just for tonight. It doesn't mean anything, but their hearts knew better. Each smile carried unspoken truth. Each touch echoed years of suppressed longing. Each moment felt like a glimpse into a reality they both secretly wanted, but were too afraid to claim. The act became a doorway to everything they had been hiding, everything they had been denying. By the time the night grew quiet and the world around them faded, pretending no longer felt like pretending. The lines had blurred beyond recognition. What started as a harmless illusion had peeled back the layers of their friendship, revealing emotions too deep to ignore. In trying to fake love, they found themselves confronting the truth, that their hearts had already crossed that line long before their minds caught up. And once truth reveals itself through pretense, it becomes impossible to return to the lie of just friends. In a world that often measures success by bank accounts, luxury possessions, and social status, it can be easy to assume that someone with money automatically holds more value. But true worth is not found in the number of zeros on a financial statement. It is found in the depth of a person's character, in the way they treat others, in the sincerity of their heart. He may have been a millionaire, admired, respected, and envied by many, but that wasn't what made him important to her. When she looked at him, she didn't see the wealth, the influence, or the polished exterior. She saw the man who quietly supported her through her storms, who made her laugh when she felt like breaking, who never used his success to make her feel small. His worth existed entirely outside the world's definition of greatness. To him, wealth was simply a background feature of his life, not the center of it. The world saw him as powerful, successful, unreachable, but she saw the late-night conversations, the quiet moments of vulnerability, the stories he never shared with anyone else. He had climbed his way to success through sheer determination, yet he never let it harden him. Instead of using his achievements to build walls, he used them to create opportunities for the people he cared about. His humility was something she admired even more than his accomplishments. And despite the life of privilege he lived, he never forgot how to be gentle, how to be kind, how to be human. She often wondered how someone like him, someone who moved through elite circles and made decisions that influenced entire companies, could still find time to care so deeply. The contrast between his public persona and the man she knew in private was striking. Out there, he was a leader, polished and composed, but with her, he was soft, unguarded, and real. That authenticity was what drew her in. It wasn't his wealth that made her heart ache when he smiled. It was the sincerity behind that smile. It wasn't his status that made her feel safe in his presence. It was the way he listened, truly listened, as if her words carried more value than anything he owned. She realized that true worth cannot be bought. It must be felt. Their friendship existed outside the boundaries of wealth. He never treated her like she was less simply because she had less. He never made her feel like she didn't belong in his world. Instead, he stepped into hers with ease, as though it was his favorite place to be. He remembered the small things, her favorite street food, the stories about her late-night worries, the things she dreamed of but never dared to pursue. He never tried to impress her with money because he understood that love, loyalty, and respect could never be purchased. Instead, he offered her something far more valuable: consistency. In a world distracted by superficial glamour, his unwavering presence stood out like a rare treasure. People often assume that relationships with someone wealthy come with imbalances. Power shifts, insecurity, fear of not being enough. But she never felt that with him. He created an equal space between them, a space where worth was measured by character, not currency. He valued her opinions, relied on her advice, and appreciated her honesty. She didn't need to impress him. She didn't need to compete with the glamorous people in his life. With him, she felt seen, not as someone beneath him, but as someone beside him. That equality was something money could never create. It was born from mutual respect, shared experiences, and a connection that went far deeper than material wealth. Over the years, she learned that his true richness was not in his fortune, but in his heart. His kindness, his loyalty, his ability to make people feel valued, those were the qualities that made him priceless. She realized that wealth can buy comfort, convenience, and luxury, but it cannot buy warmth or goodness or the kind of love that makes someone feel cherished. And as she spent more time with him, she understood something profound. Wealth might shape a person's lifestyle, but it does not define their worth. His worth was in the love he gave, the humility he carried, and the sincerity with which he held her hand, pretend or not. Communication is the bridge that transforms uncertainty into clarity, confusion into connection, and hidden emotion into undeniable truth. For years, they lived in a comfortable rhythm, sharing laughter, secrets, and comfort, while carefully avoiding the one conversation that could change everything between them. They talked about work, dreams, failures, and the small details of daily life, but they never discussed the growing tension beneath the surface. It was easier to maintain the illusion of just friends than to risk unraveling the fragile balance they had built. But all of that changed the moment she asked him for one night of pretend love. Her words became the doorway to a conversation they had both feared and needed. When that request fell from her lips, it carried more meaning than she intended. It wasn't just a favor, it was an admission, a crack in the wall she had built around her heart, and he heard the tremor in her voice, sensed the vulnerability hiding behind her careful explanation. For the first time, she let him see a part of her she had always protected. His response, though gentle, held an unspoken truth as well. He didn't question her motives, didn't tease her, didn't make light of the situation. Instead, he simply agreed, his tone soft and filled with a heaviness she didn't fully understand. It was a moment charged with communication that went far beyond words. Throughout that night, their conversation flowed differently. It was deeper, more intimate, as though some barrier between them had finally dissolved. They spoke in glances, in warmth, in moments of silence that revealed more than spoken sentences could. Every touch, every shared breath felt like a conversation of its own, a confession neither dared to voice aloud. She noticed the sincerity in his gestures, the way he held her like something fragile and precious. He noticed the softness in her eyes, the way she leaned closer without thinking. Their bodies communicated a truth their words were still too afraid to articulate. The forced closeness of their pretend scenario became a catalyst for honesty. Pretending to be a couple meant stepping into emotional territory they had avoided for years. And in that space, truth began to slip out, not in dramatic declarations, but in subtle, unguarded moments. A quiet "you matter to me," a lingering look, a gentle brush of fingertips that neither pulled away from. Communication doesn't always arrive in loud, bold statements. Sometimes it arrives in the softness of things not said but undeniably felt. And in those softened edges of conversation, they both realized something was shifting. But communication is not just about expressing emotions. It is also about understanding them. Throughout the night, each of them began to interpret the other's feelings with new clarity. She saw the affection behind his careful protectiveness, the way he remembered the smallest details about her likes and dislikes. He saw the trust in her eyes, the way she relaxed in his presence, the way she lit up when he looked at her. These realizations became a dialogue of their own, one that neither could ignore. Every expression, every smile, every hesitant pause revealed truths they had buried beneath years of silent longing. What truly changed everything was not the words they exchanged, but the courage that grew from them. Communication opened a door they could no longer close. It stripped away the excuses they had used to hide their feelings. It made them aware of what they truly meant to each other. For years, they had been speaking around the truth, side, stepping it, masking it with humor, drowning it in routine conversation. But that night, their communication became a mirror, reflecting the depth of emotion they had both been afraid to confront. And once you see yourself and someone else clearly, once understanding replaces assumption, it becomes impossible to return to the silence you lived in before. Real love often hides behind hesitation, fear, and uncertainty. But once it is finally admitted, it flows with a natural ease that is impossible to fake. For years, they tiptoed around their feelings, carefully avoiding the truth that simmered beneath every shared smile and every lingering touch. The unspoken tension between them was always there, quietly pulsing like an unacknowledged heartbeat. But the moment they allowed even a sliver of honesty to slip through, when their actions finally reflected their true emotions, everything softened. The confusion faded, the fear quieted, and what remained was something beautifully simple. It felt easy to love each other, not because the world changed, but because they stopped fighting what was already there. When they stepped out of the boundaries of pretend, even just for a moment, love began to reveal itself in ways neither had expected. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming. Instead, it settled into their interactions like it had always belonged there. Their conversations grew more natural, more open. They didn't have to search for words or worry about sounding foolish. They spoke freely, with a comfort that only comes when hearts no longer hide. Their laughter became fuller. Their silence became warmer. They found themselves reaching for each other without second guessing, without overthinking. The effort they once used to conceal their feelings transformed into ease, an ease that came from finally embracing what they had both been afraid to say. As real love emerged, it didn't demand grand gestures or perfect moments. It showed itself in small, everyday actions. The way he instinctively placed a hand on her back when guiding her through a crowd. The way she leaned into his shoulder during quiet moments, no longer pulling away, as if the touch meant too much. The way they remembered each other's words and carried them gently, as though they were reminders of something sacred. These subtle shifts came effortlessly because love wasn't something they were trying to create anymore. It was something they were finally allowing themselves to acknowledge. The pretense had fallen away, and what remained was honest, simple connection. Before, every moment between them had been filled with second guessing, wondering if the other person felt the same, worrying about crossing lines, trying to maintain boundaries that never fit their hearts. But once the truth began to reveal itself, that constant internal battle dissolved. The tension that once felt heavy became light, even joyful. They no longer had to decode each other's expressions or fear misinterpretation. Every action felt clearer. Every glance felt understood. They didn't need explanations or justifications anymore. They simply existed together, two hearts moving in the same direction without needing permission or apology. That is the beauty of real love. Once mutual, it becomes the most natural state in the world. What surprised them most was how familiar real love felt. It didn't introduce itself as something new. It arrived like a memory they had almost forgotten. The ease between them made it feel as though they had been lovers long before their minds understood it. Suddenly, the past made sense. The jealousy they never admitted, the comfort they always found in each other, the way their lives naturally intertwined. Everything they once dismissed as friendship felt different in hindsight, as if the truth had always been woven into the foundation of their bond. Accepting love didn't change who they were. It revealed who they had been all along. When love finally steps into the light, it doesn't need to be forced or controlled. It simply flows, effortless and steady. They no longer questioned if they were making a mistake or risking too much. The fear that once kept them silent became irrelevant, overshadowed by the undeniable rightness of being together. What once felt complicated now felt incredibly simple. Their hearts had been speaking the same language for years. They had only needed to listen. And with that realization, everything between them began to fall into place with a natural grace that can only come from love that was meant to be. And so, when the night that was meant to be pretend finally came to an end, neither of them could return to who they were before. They had crossed a line that was never meant to stay untouched, one built not on impulse, but on years of silent longing, quiet devotion, and unspoken truth. What had begun as a simple favor became the mirror they needed to finally see the depth of their connection. In the soft moments between laughter and stillness, between pretend gestures and real emotion, they discovered something undeniable. Love had been there all along, patiently waiting for them to stop running from it. They realized that the heart has its own timing, its own language, its own way of revealing what we fear to admit. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it arrives on a night meant to be pretend, when two people finally stop hiding from themselves. And once the truth is spoken, once love is recognized, life can no longer continue in half-light. They stepped into their truth, hand in hand, accepting the love that had always belonged to them. Because in the end, the greatest love stories don't begin with perfection. They begin with courage. They grow through honesty. And they become unforgettable when two hearts finally choose to stop pretending and allow themselves to fall.